Welcome to the Reaching Up Podcast. I'm Ron Farris.
And I'm Daniel Locke.
Today we are going to answer the question, what is judgmentalism?
Mm-hmm.
Judgmentalism, that's a $20 word.
It is.
So what do you think judgmentalism is?
Judgmentalism, and I don't know, I'll finish the rest of it. Why? I think the question that comes to mind with this is like, why judgmentalism kills our ability to be open and honest. So judgmentalism is I would say it's more of a church word. So I could say, I think of it more as a churchy word, or people who are oftentimes describe the church. But judgmentalism can be anything. But the definition that I kind of settled on, I kind of liked, was judgmentalism here means treating others with harsh evaluation, condemnation, dismissiveness, or withholding grace, often focusing on flaws, failures, sometimes without understanding, compassion, or humility. When people feel judged, they tend to close off, hide things, or put up walls instead of being vulnerable or real. So that's kind of what I think, a harsh evaluation, condemnation. That's kind of what comes to mind with that. What about you?
Well, I would agree with you. I think about harshness, being critical, and then I think about self-righteousness, holier than thou kind of thing. So yeah, I do agree with you that the word judgmentalism, when you say it, immediately pops into my mind as someone who claims to be religious, going after somebody else who's not as religious as they are.
Yep.
And, that assumes moral superiority. It condemns other people for their flaws and sins or choices. It lacks empathy and understanding, and it focuses on their faults instead of your own. And it is not the same as something like I would call discernment, which is a spiritual gift, which is the ability to grasp moral truth and reality. Judgmentalism is more about the spirit or posture behind how we view and treat others. It's taking the focus off ourselves and our flaws and putting it on other people. And sometimes it's just downright, stupid, for people to, decide that they are so supreme that they have the right to judge another person. And we do need to unpack that because, there is some personal responsibility in being a Christian, if that's, what the perspective we're going to take here. I think that certainly means to avoid judgmentalism, like the plague. So, we definitely want to talk about that. So reasons that judgmentalism is harmful, reasons that it is harmful. I think that's the right verb subject agreement there. So one thing it does is it creates it destroys the ability in a group to be open and honest, because I'm not as likely to be open and honest with you if I have a fear or I know for a fact based on your past experience that you're going to take a judgmental attitude, that you're going to judge me. I hear this over and over and over again in a lot of the groups I'm in, where men talk about their, become vulnerable and talk about their fears and their struggles. I have heard many men say in those groups that they do not or have not shared in the past because of a fear of being judged. So this must be a serious problem.
I think it makes sense to me. There's some things that make sense, some things that don't make sense. Maybe that's everybody, but some things like more on a spiritual or intellectual level, I guess. But in this one, if someone immediately judges my mistake, like immediately, or is always on top of me, like watching me, like I can do 10 right things and one wrong thing, and the one wrong thing is the only thing they see, then it can make sense. I'm going to try to hide every mistake. I'm not going to tell any mistake. I'm either going to hide it, I'm going to pretend that it's not there, or I'm just going to overperform and act like everything's okay. Like there's three options in my mind of how I'm going to do that.
Yep.
And all of them are not good.
Well, no, because you're in a dynamic that is not healthy. You've got somebody that's doing something they shouldn't do, which is judging.
Yeah.
And so your response to that is going to be less than perfect, because you're dealing with essentially what I'd call a toxic atmosphere. And that's why judgmentalism poisons groups. If you've got somebody in a group that's overly judgmental, it's going to destroy the intimacy, or the possibility of intimacy, almost for the entire group. This is an example of where one person can ruin a whole group. So it's a serious issue. One of the other things that judgmentalism does is it elevates the importance of appearances over reality. So if you are dealing with a judgmental person, then what are you going to do? You're going to try to say or do everything you can to arise above their judgment. So, you're going to meet their expectations, which means that you may have to stretch to appear to be something you're not. And you see this in a lot, again, of groups, the group dynamic, in a group where everybody is there to talk about what they're struggling with. If anybody in there is afraid, or if everybody in there is afraid of some of the judgmental person in the group, then you're not going to hear a whole lot of discussion about, you're going to hear discussions about anything but the things they're struggling with. And this can be very frustrating in a group like that. So, it's going to be meaningful that we talk about how to deal with this. But, when somebody that's judgmental is there, it just brings a shallowness to the whole experience. And we end up all wearing our masks instead of being our true selves, as you hear a lot nowadays. And it also basically shuts down the ability to grow, because we're too busy focusing our energy on pretending to be something we're not.
It's interesting you say that language, because that's exactly what I was thinking of when the things that we get from it. And I try to be careful because we do lead, my wife and I lead a small group, and we want it to be, we're trying to create the community that we want in a way. So we're trying to make the discussions in the group, the culture of the group, we're trying to make it what we want it to be. And we don't want judgmentalism to be a part of that. So we've done some specific things to help that. But you said, and I think this is great, like we don't want it to hinder growth. And so like, as this is like, without a safe space to confess flaws and ask questions and struggle, people can't move forward.
That's right.
And so I'm thinking of judgmentalism as like, judgment tends to freeze people in what they are, and not rather than help them grow. So it keeps them exactly where they are. There's no growth in it. And so we have rules in our small group. I don't know if you've ever been a part of a Bible study group that has rules for discussion, but we try to.
I have, yeah.
We try to limit the times we use the word we, and we try to use I statements. There's some relationship. I learned that in marriage counseling. Try to use the I statement instead of we. So we should be doing this, and we should be doing this, because then it just sounds like you're talking over people, and we should be doing this. But you say like, hey, I need to be better at. That changes the whole thing. If I say we need to be better at being nice to people, because I've seen people not be nice to people. Or if you say, I need to do a better job being nice to people, because I find that I can be short with people in this situation. It makes it more personal. It makes it less, I don't know. That makes it less judgy to me when you start to use more I statements. So I say it jokingly. I say you wouldn't pee on the group, so don't we on the group. If you find yourself using we statements,
said that in this podcast.
I have. I like it.
Yeah.
But it helps me, because I want people to be able to, even if you don't feel comfortable in certain group settings, that's okay. But to feel comfortable in a personal setting and be like, hey man, I am struggling with this. And I know you've talked about times that you've struggled before. And so I know that you're not going to come at me saying like, well, you should just do better. So like things like that, like I want to be an open place. And I think that's true of, I think it should be true of most of us.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with that. So to go straight to the solution, I will say this: you and I try to take I mean, ultimately, we talk about a lot of things, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we come back again and again and again to the Christian perspective, because I'm Christian, you're Christian, and our Christianity genuinely does have a huge influence, incredibly large influence over our lives. And I would argue that our lives are getting better every time we meet because of what Christ is doing in our lives, God is doing through his Holy Spirit. So I start out with the assumption that God knows me. He knows everything about me, everything. There's nothing that I can hide from God. You remember David, famously in Psalms 139:23, this is one of many, many places where he said it, but he said, "Search me, O God, and know my heart." That is sort of the starting point with me is that, I stand before God naked. There's nothing that I can hide from God. And he loves me anyway. He loves me and he wants me in his kingdom, knowing everything about me. Not only does he know what I've done, he knows what I'm going to do. That is the infinite love of God. And I have that love in me. So when I walk into a group of, let's just say a group of men, because most of the time, most of the groups I'm in are groups of men. I'm in a few co-ed groups, but really and truly only one, other than my church. And in church, I'm just there to listen and to sing and whatnot. We don't really have a group setting in our church, but the group I'm in my church is co-ed, but there's only really one or two ladies that comes with any regularity. So most of the time I'm with men. And when I'm with men, the dynamic in groups of men is different. It's just it's a tough crowd. But when I'm sitting there with them, I think about how freeing it is that I am known by God and that he loves me. And so I stress the need for me to see the other men in that group through the eyes that God sees them with, which is to love them, no matter what they're doing. And I, if I can keep that attitude, I don't get to a place of wanting to be judgmental, because I'm thinking, of course, I'm also going to admit this, most of the time when I'm in a group of men, they're talking about stuff they're doing or stuff they're struggling with, and there's not a thing that comes out of their mouth that I can't say, me too. I know exactly what you're talking about. And hey, as it turns out, in a group like that, I do frequently say, I understand exactly what you're talking about, because I've been there and I've done that too. And a lot of times, if God has delivered me from whatever that thing is, then I will mention that as well. And it's nothing I've done, it's everything that God has done. And I really and truly believe, because David not only prayed that God would search and know his heart, but he said, create a new heart in me and give me a new spirit. And he did that at a point in time when he had really messed up, by committing adultery and fathering a child that wasn't his. And by having the woman that he committed adultery with, he had her husband killed. So he was in a bad place. And then he comes right behind that, and he is convicted. And what does he do? He did the right thing. He cried out to God and he said, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. He wanted to be changed. And when I am that guy and I walk into a group, what would my perspective be to want to judge you if you're failing too? What I want for you is the same thing that God did for me. I want you to be delivered. And, it's just a totally different attitude for me when I realize what God has done for me. God had every right to condemn me to instant death for any one of a number of things that I have done. I mean, if you're out there thinking that that's an awful thing, then you're judging me. So stop it. But I'm thinking to myself, the first rule of getting around judgmentalism is to realize how fortunate you are that God has elected through his grace not to judge you, right? Because Jesus, you remember, said, by the same standard that you judge others, you will be judged.
Yeah.
So that tells me if I don't want to be judged with a heavy-handed standard, then I don't need to be judging other people with a heavy-handed standard. I need to have a very gracious standard toward other people, so that if you want to be selfish about it, so that I will be judged by unselfish standard.
Yeah. And I think that almost goes back to kind of what we talked about in a couple of previous episodes about avoidance and denial. If we choose to not be aware or choose not to acknowledge our faults, then it's going to make it really easy for us to see the faults in other people.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to take off the I was thinking about taking out the grace in it. If we don't recognize the grace we've been given, it's going to be really hard for us to give grace to other people.
Well, that's true, and that's the sort of the rational, I think, answer, but, at the end of the day, in Jesus's ministry, one of the things, Jesus didn't say a whole lot about what to and not to do other than to love and these general statements like this. But when it came to judgment, he was very specific. He said, do not judge.
Yeah.
And that's in Matthew 7. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?
Yeah.
And then he went on to say, as I recall, first remove the plank in your eye, and then you can see clearly to judge the speck in your brother's eye. Yeah. If I spend my time making sure that I am right, I'm not going to have any time to worry about you. I'm gonna what you're doing wrong. If I have time to think about what's wrong in your life or in somebody else's life, then I am just absolutely wasting my time when I should be thinking about what I need to change in my life, because there's always something there.
And I don't know, that segue helps me as I was thinking about it, because we were finishing up 2 Corinthians this past Tuesday. And I think it just, even as we were thinking about these subjects, I was like, this worked out really well.
Always does.
Always does.
Yeah.
So in chapter 12 of 2 Corinthians, it's when Paul's talking about the thorn in the flesh.
Oh yeah.
And where he boasts, where he brags about, and he's like, it's not in anything that he's doing. It's all about, and I just love this. So he has a thorn in the flesh. He prays 3 times. And concerning this, he pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it would leave me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness. Therefore, I will most gladly boast all the more about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may reside in me. And I don't know, that just perspective is, I think, so helpful, I think, to combat judgmentalism. Do we boast? Do we brag about the things we're not good at, so that God is more glorified in how he's worked in us?
Wow. That's powerful. That's a powerful thought. I may need to just stop talking and think about that for a minute.
Because it's just and as I was processing through that, it's like, that's because he says he boasts about that. He brags about that in weaknesses. And that's super countercultural.
Yeah.
No one is saying, and I use examples like my boss at a yearly evaluation is not going to come in like, man, I see some of your weaknesses. I'm like, I'm very proud of these weaknesses. Your time management's terrible. So that's a great thing. I just want you to know that helps everyone else work a little harder and helps bring us together. So I'm really glad at your weaknesses. I'm not going to hear that.
Nope.
And so it's intriguing. Spiritual math is different than our math, but it's just that idea. And I think this is what helps my mind I want to always stay away from being judgmental.
Yeah.
I want to always have grace filled. I want to be able to say truthful things in love when they need to, but I don't ever want my first inclination to be, well, they just need to do better. Because in this right here, if I'm very aware of my weaknesses and how it displays God's power, man, I want to get better at that. I want to get better at being okay with and happy about the weaknesses that show God's power more.
That's really a powerful thought. And I'm going to have to say that I'll be thinking about that for a little while, because that's one of those things I haven't really pondered in the past. my initial response to the idea of how to deal with judgmentalism would be, well, just look at the way Christ handled it.
Mm-hmm.
Christ didn't judge other people.
No.
He was very quick to be gracious.
Mm-hmm.
And why would we want to be anything other than Christ-like?
Yeah.
I guess there are people, and if you're listening to this podcast and you don't want to be Christ-like, then let's talk. Keep listening. But I think for the majority of people who probably are willing, to listen to this podcast, we're 50-something episodes in, they've got the idea that we're trying to live, life by the Christian standard.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Christian standard says, do not judge. But it's not that we don't do it because we're ordered not to do it. I don't think we do it because there's no reason to do it. It's never a good idea. It's not a logical, rational choice for somebody who wants to live in the love of God.
Mm-hmm.
We're reminded in 1 Samuel 16:7 that man looks at the outward appearance,
Mm-hmm.
and we do. We look at what we see, but the Lord looks at the heart.
Mm-hmm.
You remember? And Jesus said, that it's the things that come out of the heart of a man that defile him.
Yeah.
And the heart is the place where, we call it the heart, but it's really the soul. The soul is that, the conscious soul is that place where we just tend to want to do the wrong thing, and we're all infected with it, and the Holy Spirit of God, to some degree, when it comes into us, helps lead us through the battle that we're going to have with that tendency, that inclination, as long as we're human. Mm-hmm. And, judgmentalism is one of those things that can poison us, because what we're calling judgmentalism is the lack of empathy, the lack of understanding of who God is and how God is handling us. I mean, it's just probably the sign of just incredible ignorance in terms of the spiritual realities. And so if you're experiencing judgmentalism, there is no excuse for it. But more importantly, you need to be concerned about why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. What is it that you've missed in the equation of what Christ did for you and what Christ taught us about life in general, because it doesn't fit. It has no place to fit. And I really do. I think, when you look at Scripture, like a great example is Paul's writing in Galatians. He said, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should condemn them. Is that what he said? Mm-hmm. No. He says that we should restore that person gently. Yeah. Where is judgmentalism in that? There's just no room for it. And then he says, but watch yourselves, or you may also be tempted. Yeah. Another way you hear this put often is, there, but for the grace of God, go I. When I see somebody that's really wrapped up, just like yesterday, I was in a meeting and a gentleman walked in and he was thoroughly and completely intoxicated. There were some people in that room who were annoyed with that. But, my thought process was, there, but for the grace of God, go I. This man is just at that stage in this process that's a lot closer to the beginning than I am. But, had God not had mercy on me, I might very well be in that same situation. And God may be in the process of having mercy on him by letting him wander in here. Mm-hmm. And, my job is not to run him off or to not like the situation he's in. My job is to come alongside him and help him to become what it is he obviously is searching for, and he doesn't even know at this point. And, there was just lots and lots of room for grace in that scenario. And there was absolutely no room to be judgmental. If I was judgmental at all in that situation, it was against those people who were wanting to be annoyed by the guy. Because I thought, well, at least he made it in here. Yeah. That could be the first step in the rest of his life, being better you know, and I don't think I could see that if I was consumed with the desire or drunk with the habit of judging people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who engage in judgmentalism habitually are doing it because they themselves feel grossly insufficient.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we need to talk about that. You know, if somebody listening to this podcast is experiencing things like saying to themselves, "I'd never do what they do,"
mm-hmm.
you know, they're just lazy or stupid or immoral. You know, they deserve what they get. They brought this on themselves. If you're that person who's saying those things, then you're judgmental. You're being judgmental. And that, I love it when you say it, you know, that's really that spiritual check engine light going off and saying, hey, time out. You need to pause and reflect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're gossiping, tearing other people down, same thing. That's judgmentalism. Harsh, sarcastic comments about people's failures. Constant criticism without compassion. Also, it can manifest itself socially, withdrawing love or kindness from somebody that messed up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when do you need love and kindness most? When you mess up. I mean, you know, why would you possibly try to love them or be kind to them less because they've made a mistake? Think about that.
Yeah.
It is counterintuitive. Feeling superior because of your lifestyle, your theology, or morals. You know, well, you know, this is the classic picture. Jesus painted it of the two men who went up to pray. You know, one of them says, you know, thank God, you know, I'm not like this sinner over here. You know, I tithe twice a day and I do this and I do that. And, you know, I'm polishing my halo, as some people say. And the other guy was just beating on his chest. He wouldn't even look up to heaven. And he said, God, you know, have mercy on me, a sinner. And Jesus said, which of those two men went away justified? And it wasn't the first guy, you know. You know, and people who tend to be judgmental are also more concerned with being right than being loving. And a lot of times when you love other people, you will just, you will let what might naturally be make you look best. Yeah, you'll just let that sort of pass, and you know, let that person's needs be more important than yours in the moment. These are all things that come with this notion of judgmentalism, and I hate to say it, but this episode is done. We're right at the end of our time. We'll pick this topic up again in our next episode. But do you have anything else today?
I think what I want to end this one with and start the next episode is this idea that, do we have an ability to understand someone's story enough to say, if I was in their shoes, I probably would have done the same thing?
Okay. Empathy. All right. Well, we'll pick up with empathy in our next episode. Empathy in dealing with the curse of judgmentalism, the scourge of judgmentalism. All right. So thanks for listening to this episode. We appreciate you tuning in. If you're listening to us on YouTube, be sure and hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell, and be sure and get our next episode first. If you're listening on any of the listening services, iHeart, Spotify, Apple, be sure and like us. Leave us comments. We always read those. And if you're interested in having a more detailed conversation with us, we welcome that. Send us an email at contact@reachinguppodcast.com. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening.